Thank you, Francesco. Thank you, everybody, and Christian in particular. I'm here to present my chapter about restaurant, but I won't speak about all the contents of the chapter, but about how I structured the chapter and why this chapter has been structured in this way. So if anyone, above all among the students, wants to give me a feedback, I'd be grateful to you. This chapter speaks about restaurants and why this topic is clearly connected to the fact that dining out is a leisure experience that has become more and more frequent, and more or less we all have experience of this kind. Our perspective on the restaurant will be linked to the space, and I'm going to explain in what sense. First, this is the summary of the chapter. There will be, we are going to see all the how these paragraphs are constructed, and we have 6 paragraphs, 3 focus, and then some words about glossary. But first of all, we need to do a premise. That is our point of view on space. In our approach, space is considered as a language that speaks beyond itself, because space speaks us about society, about who has planned it, about who has lived it. So in the case of restaurant, space speaks about the chef, the relationship between the chef and customer, the way of cooking, the culinary values, and so on. And for this reason, in our opinion, it's interesting to look at how the space of the restaurant is arranged. So the first paragraph speaks about how the restaurant was born, and it's a brief, a glimpse that look at how, at an historical point of view on restaurant that is useful to fix the context in which the restaurant was born, but I shall not dwell on it now. So the second paragraph is about the outside part of the restaurant, and it's because a restaurant's communication begins with its location, clearly. So if we want to do an analysis of a restaurant, one of the first questions we should ask ourselves are: is the restaurant placed in the center of the city? Is it outside the citizen itinerary? Do I go there by chance or by design? Is it located in the main street or is it hidden? So we can do some example here in these 2 images. For example, we have 2 McDonald's, namely the same restaurant, but they are clearly communicative, very different to each other. That's because the first is placed in an airport, the second in the center of the city. And so clearly they will have different type of customers, for example. And so one of the first points is that a place also acquires meaning by the context, from the places which surround it. Another example, where is placed the restaurant? For example, here we have a central restaurant in the main square of Siena, and places of this kind are like shop front places where to go to see and to be seen, maybe. And you can pass from this square and you can say, I stopped there. On the contrary, hidden restaurants involves a sense of discovery. You should go there by design, and once you found it, you have a sense of surprise, maybe. So there are very different type of seduction on the customer. Another crucial point of the outside part of the restaurant is the entrance, because the entrance is it marks the boundaries of gastronomic experience, it separates the street from the restaurant, and this limit can be expressed in very different way. They have clearly, and even in this case, very different communicative effect. In the chapter, you will find many examples of this of the entrance. Here, I will present you just two. One of these two extreme cases. One of these is Le Calandre, a starred Michelin restaurant by Massimiliano Laimo in Padova. It has a strongly marked entrance, and it seems that it wants not to be seen, in the sense that from the outside you can't look what there's inside. Entrance like this, the strength point is the emphasis on the exclusive nature of the restaurant and their piquing curiosity. The weakness point is the risk of putting potential clients off. As one said, it's so exclusive, it's too much for me. On the opposite side, we have cases like this. This is the Madonnina del Pescatore by Moreno Cedroni. That ostents its spaces, because from outside you can look what there's inside, how the restaurant is inside. In cases like this, the strength is the customer is reassured by the fact that they already have a good idea of what to expect when they go in from outside, whereas the weakness is that customer might be irritated by being watched as they eat by passers-by. And clearly, as I was saying, there are always also intermediate cases like this where you can have a glimpse on the dining area. Then, the third paragraph is about the inside part of the restaurant. And in this case, my choice has been that of pay particular attention to the relationship between the kitchen and the dining room, because these are the two main spaces of the restaurant, and because their relationship has radically changed in recent years. Even in this case, we can notice how hidden kitchen, when you have an open kitchen, or the choice to have an open kitchen or an hidden kitchen is very crucial. The open kitchen, for example, gets a picture that who realize that space want to show the hygiene, the care for food, or want to show the technique in the cooking process, turning often the cooking process into a form of a cooking show. And for the reason, someone has spoken about entertaining, that is eat plus entertaining. On the contrary, an hidden kitchen wants to hide, quite as it was a magical ritual, the cooking process, and want to create a surprise effect on the customer. Now, in the past, hidden kitchen were common. Now, open kitchen are more and more common, more and more frequent, both in restaurant and private house. This transformation in the space can be linked to a transformation in the conception of the cooking process and of the chef. So, before, with the hidden kitchen, cooking was conceived as a way to provide a gastronomic experience. Now, cooking is often a performance. Before, kitchen was a place of preparation, a remote space in which manual work was carried out. Now, kitchen is a fulcrum and a center of the experience. Before, the chef was considered as an helper who placed their ability at the service of the customer. Now, the chef is a chef star, a subject, a performer, a protagonist. Then, the fourth paragraph is about identity, values, and passion. Is here the starting point is that restaurant is considered as a complex machine made up of people, objects, and spaces. And if all these elements work together, then restaurant can also communicate some passions, for example. So the key word, what we should consider when we're going to analyze a restaurant or to conceive a restaurant is if now gastronomic discourse and special discourse work together. And the key word is coherence. Even here, I'll show you some example, but in the Cucota handbook you will find more. For example, here we have the Armani restaurant in Dubai. Here the space is classical, minimal, and even the dishes are minimal. Then both space and dishes follow the same logic, that is a classical logic, and the logic of subtraction, the less is the better. And this kind of logic is also coherent with the values of the Armani brand. On the contrary, we have the case of the cruises, where we have a plentiful, a sumptuous space and plentiful food, often offered in a wide buffet and so on. Here there is an opposite logic, that is that of addition, and a logic, a Baroque aesthetic. So, other example about what we were saying, namely about passions. We have some places that seems to look at the past. In what sense? In cases like this, this is a restaurant in Florence whose name is Il Contadino, which means the farmer. Here we have a vintage decor that is associated to typical food. There's a look at the past, as if the past is supposed to be more genuine, more authentic, as the food offered in the restaurant. So there's a sort of nostalgia aesthetic. On the contrary, there are places that look at the future and aims to provoke astonishment on the client. There are places like this. This is Aurum in Singapore, whose ambience reproduce medical ambience with many aluminium surfaces or wheelchairs instead of normal chairs and so on. Here the space is very eccentric, as eccentric is the food on offer, because the cuisine here is inspired by molecular cuisine, which is a type of cuisine inspired by physical and medical and chemical principles. So even in this case we have a sort of a coherence with eccentric food and eccentric space. Here the accent is about culture, is a culturalized ambience, a culturalized cuisine. On the opposite, we have the case of the Noma, ex-former best restaurant in the world in Copenhagen. And here we have a neutral space with natural materials, no tablecloth and so on, and natural food. Here the cuisine is inspired to the less human intervention on the ingredients. So these are some cases of coherence. The fifth paragraph is titled Time to Taste, and it's a glimpse at how eating places segment our daily lives, and it's because clearly space and time are two strictly connected dimensions. What I mean, like, for example, we go every morning to the same coffee shop to have a breakfast, and this marks the beginning of the day. We go every day to the same canteen for a lunch. This marks the passage from morning to afternoon. We go in the afternoon for a snack in the tea room, and it marks a moment of rest. We go in the evening to a bar to have an aperitif, and this beats the starting point of our leisure time, and so on. Last paragraph is a possible typology of restaurant starting from the question of if now the restaurant space connects with a particular geographical area. We will find 4 types of restaurants, 2 of which declare explicitly a connection with the territory. First, typicized restaurants are those who mark their link with a proper space. We find here, for example, flags, waiters dressed up in typical clothing, souvenir, typical tablecloth, and clearly, obviously, the offer of local foods. Or, second, exoticized restaurants that are those restaurants who show marks of other cultures. So, for example, multicolored awnings or characteristic ceramic for a Tunisian restaurant, or cushions on the floor and chopsticks for a Japanese restaurant, and the offer of ethnic food. What is interesting to notice in this case, in my opinion, is that typical and exotic are not so different, but they follow the same logic. I mean with this that in both cases we are in front of spaces that are full of almost caricature-like exhibition of elements based on broadly recognized stereotypes. And so what is typical and what is exotic depend on our point of view. If I am in London and I'm going to a Tunisian restaurant, I'm going to an exoticized restaurant. If I'm in Tunisia and I'm going on a Tunisian restaurant, I'm going to a typical restaurant. So it depends on our point of view, what is exotic and what is typical. The other 2 cases are those that are not clearly linked to a particular territory. For example, we have globalized restaurants that are those who declare to be part of the world. The space here is full of globalized icons, and it's the realm of brand and branding. And on the other side, we have the glacialized restaurants that are those that are not linked to a specific space. We have minimal and aseptic places, for example, transparency, neutral colors, sobriety, and here the space is in service of the dish. But we can also find some restaurants that mix 2 types of this typology. For example, the Fratelli La Bufala was born as a typical Italian Napolitan pizzeria and then spread all over the world. So we have marks of being Italian that become globalized icons. So we have a typicized plus globalized restaurant, or we have cases like this in which we have an exotic restaurant in which the marks of the exotic are softened, less marked. Okay, then we can have a quick outlook at the 3 focus. The first focus is about restaurant markets and multifunctional formats. This focus has been conceived because one of the recent trends is that one goes to the restaurant not only to eat but also to do other things. Like in this case, that is a brainwash cafe. This is a laundromat plus a cafeteria. Sometimes these 2 functions are strictly connected, and in this way the communicative efficacy of the place is augmented. As for example, in this case we have a florist that is also a tea room. Or sometimes these 2 functions are connected to the same food chain. So for more and more we have fish shops that become fish restaurants, or delicatessen that become places to have an aperitif in meat dishes, and so on. Even here, the communicative effect is that there's a sort of myth of the shortening of the food chain, which is supposed to augment the genuinity of the food on offer. In these multifunctional places, we can also add the contemporary redefinition of the contemporary redefinition of the market as a food outlet. That's because more and more one go to the market not only to buy fresh ingredients but also to eat, with different level of institutionalization. For example, in Palermo we have a market whose name is Borgo Vecchio that during the evening become a pub. Here there's a low level of institutionalization because the customers rearrange the space spontaneously and creatively, so that flower boxes become fulcrum or cars become tables and so on. A medium level of institutionalization can be represented by the San Miguel market in Madrid, in which we find tables that are specifically directed to customers who wants to eat inside the market. Or a high level of institutionalization is represented by Italy, that is a market conceived with a dual purpose, namely that you can go there to buy or to eat quality Italian product. The second focus is about fast food and its evolution. And why this focus? It's because fast food are one of the most widespread type of restaurant, and one of the most debated type of restaurant, and because fast food recently evolved in many differentiated concepts. What are the main features of the fast food? The main features are that they have a strong identity, they offer the same food, same services, same prices, almost same prices everywhere. And so in this term they represent a reassurance for the client. They offer a reliable meal in a predictable context, and they are accessible not only for their low price but also because they are open for long hours. So we were saying that they've been fast food have been highly criticized. The main reason of the criticism were that the client works because he joins the line, takes the dishes, empties the trays, and because they have many machines that replace men working, and in this way they are supposed to gain in efficiency. But we can also add a positive version of fast food, in the sense that maybe client works because he feels free, because he is in a familiar ambience, in an informal ambience, and in effect McDonald's, for example, that is so rigid in the production line, tends to present itself as a place of freedom, if not a transgressive place. Come as you are, they used to say it as in a previously campaign. And only if we accept this positive version of fast food, we can explain the success of some restaurants which are completely automated restaurant. Here we have the case of Burgers in Armerg, where the dishes are offered, are delivered by a truck system, where you can order your meal through a screen, you pay the bill directly on your table by credit card, and so on. And then we can have a look at recent evolution of fast food. Because fast food restaurants historically accused of standardization have been adept at reinventing themselves, responding to criticism leveled at them and producing some interesting results. So, for example, we have Mekosher, which is a fast food specialized in Jewish food, or also Dunkin' Donuts, which is specialized in the offer of food for a break, and especially for the morning. Or we have to mention, even if despite it closed down, fast food, which was born by an idea of Ferran Adrià, and that tried to link the logic of fast food with the principle of high cuisine. And then last focus is about spectacular restaurants. And why this focus? Because the proliferation of restaurants have pushed the restaurant owners to keep finding new formulas in order to attract new customers. And so these spectacular restaurants are those in which the space tends to be more important than the food. Some example. We have, for example, the toilet restaurant in Taiwan, where you can sit in a toilet. The tables are wash basins and napkins are replaced by toilet papers. Or, for example, the ABQ bar in London that is clearly inspired by the cult TV series Breaking Bad. Or the 8380 restaurant in China, where the space is arranged as it was an airplane. So there are places that aims to astonish the client and sometimes also to provoke a reflection, as in this case that is dans le noir, where you have a dinner in a dark room and you are driven inside by blind waiters. Here, so we have an ethical discourse in the sense that the customer can experiment what blind people usually feel, and discourse about the perception, because as you need to obscure the sight to magnify the taste. So the main feature of these spectacular restaurants are that the main attraction is the restaurant itself. They are scenographic and unique restaurants. They are mythical places. They can be mythical places that became famous because of film fictions or because, for example, they belong to VIPs, and they are often touristic attractions. In all cases, you have here the space overrides the cooking. So, to conclude, when we approach to a restaurant, one of the first questions that we should ask ourselves is what does the space tell us about the food? What effects does its articulation produce? Because there are not architectural choices that are positive or negative in themselves, but a well-planned restaurant space is one in which the architecture anticipates the food, and a well-designed dish is one that integrates well with the place in which it's served. So, if one wants to plan a restaurant with its own concept of cooking and its own coherent theme, it becomes fundamental to understand if and how the gastronomic discourse and the spatial discourse refer each other and are capable of finding an equilibrium.